Hello and welcome to today's talk about wildlife planting. Hello, my name is Sylvia and I'm a founder and the designer of Flora Gardens. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we really do here at Flora Gardens. We focus on establishing gardens who are ecologically friendly and rich in plants that regarding wildflowers, wildlife friendly perennials, hedges, trees, anything which you can actually add to biodiversity and bring in wildlife into your garden. Our main focus is to, first of all, give you a bit of an idea of how you can turn your garden into a wildlife friendly garden through taking photographs and measurements of your garden, and then propose a design with 3D render of what your garden would look like once it's completed. After that, after your considerations and your thoughts on that, any adjustments or any further ideas might be proposed, added, changed, and once the design is completely to your satisfaction, then we are very happy to take on to the job and get crack on with turning your garden into the wildlife friendly heaven. Before I start, I would like to say a big thank you to everybody at the GreenFest for organising and going into all of the trouble and setting up the online week for you to enjoy, take an interest and hopefully implement some ideas which you will find useful. So first of all, I would like to talk about your particular garden and planting plants which are really good for encouraging wildlife into your garden. The second part of the talk, I would like to focus on wildflower meadows, and a very short brief at the third part of this talk, I'd like to just touch up a little bit on some unusual ways of using and planting wildflowers, and that is to plant them on the roof. So let's just start with the pollinators and wildlife friendly plants. Anybody who is thinking about, oh, I think my garden is not rich into these sorts of plants, I'm not seeing that much of an insect, not many bees and bumblebees in my garden, and everybody's talking about it, how can I do it? What exactly plants I need to plant? So the way to look at it is, the best way in my opinion to look at your garden and design your garden, to say, right, what are the colours I love to see in my garden? And look at it from that perspective. Don't be obsessed about, I need to have that particular plant or that particular plant, because actually really in every single spectrum of a colour which nature produces, there is a plant which is pollinator friendly, which is perfect for your garden. So let's start from the colours. So you establish which colour you want where, and then you take a visit into your garden centre. Don't rush, take your time, and be sure that you think through about the choices of the plants. Have a look at the labels, and most of them do have already labels which tells you whether they are wildlife friendly or not. Don't be put off by the plants which doesn't have the label, because many times those plants are still valuable plants for wildlife and pollinators. They just forgot to put the labels on to make you informed. So very easy, get your phone out, Google it, is it wildlife friendly or not? If it is, absolutely get it. When you come home, your preparation of the soil is a crucial thing. So it doesn't matter how great your plant and whatever, until you actually give a brilliant start to that plant, it's not going to flourish in your garden. So look at the type of the soil, make sure you put some great compost, some manure or nutrition-based food, which your plants will thrive. I believe that having the garden which is slightly wilder looking rather than too precise and set and so contemporary that gives you that bit of a freedom and that ability to sort of loosen up where you plant what. Of course, have a look at your labels, how high and how wide that plant can grow. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because when you sit down, you might not see the plants in the background, but when you stand up, you do. So be a bit more relaxed about planting and focus on getting the plants which are pollinator friendly. I would highly encourage everybody, please do your bit for the environment. Take your time, research. There are some amazing looking, wonderful plants which flower early from spring with the very first food and very first pollen available for pollinators to very late spring and also throughout the winter. So make sure that your garden doesn't just thrive in colour over the summer, but it's something which brings a joy and enjoyment throughout the year. So let's just talk about wildflowers. Wildflowers are a fabulous way to introduce the wildlife into your garden, and strangely enough, it might come to you as a surprise, there are all different types of wildflowers you can introduce, and not just for the bees and butterflies, but you can encourage wildflowers which are good for birds, not that birds eat it necessarily, but encourages an insect which birds love. Also, there are wildflowers which are particularly good for bats. Again, the same thing. It's not because the bats eat them, it's because the insect which is attracted to those wildflowers, and the bats adore it. So, and you could mix it. You don't need to just put one particular type, do a great mix, buy a little bit of each and do your own mix and selection, what exactly you want in your garden. Wildflowers, although it might sound a straightforward sort of thing to plant and establish, so easy, and on many websites you see how super easy it is. You just take the seeds, cut them around, and they flourish. Well, if it was that easy, why are we so short of them? Well, because it's not so easy. And however, you're establishing, it's a hard work, but when you establish, you'll just see them coming every single year, and it's just such a joy and pleasure. Wildflowers are in 3 different groups. So you've got perennials, biennials, and annuals. As I'm sure you know, it depends how frequently they flower. The perennials takes a long time to establish, so it could be some kind of a disheartening when you get a patch, remove all of the grass or whatever your topsoil is to ensure that there is no real nutrition into the ground. Wildflowers do not like any nutrition, just have it really plain. And then you plant your seeds, you water them, you look out at the patch, you remove the weeds when they start coming up to ensure that they do not overtake, because the perennials takes 2 years to establish, so they won't flower your first year. And that's, it's disheartening, but what you can do is to put a few annuals in between. So while your perennials are establishing, your annuals will bring you the joy of the colour, and then your perennials take over from then. You do need to look after a wildflower meadow. It's not something you just let it grow. You do need to give them a bit of water, look after, and especially throughout a very dry season like we've experienced this year, where it was super hot. But the end effect, when you see all the insects, from so many bees and bumblebees and butterflies starting coming into your garden, it will really pay off. Make sure that you choose wildflower seeds from a reputable source. I have learned that from my own mistakes. You always try to think, I can cut the corner here and there and buy cheap seeds. It doesn't pay off. It really is not the right thing to do. Although it might sound like wildflower seeds are super expensive, remember you don't need that many seeds per square meter. So although it might sound like usually a kilo will cost hundreds of pounds, we only really need about 10 to 100 grams to do a small area. So it doesn't really matter how big or small your piece of the garden is. Get a little corner or a planter or a border and plant the wildflowers. They're just amazing, beautiful nature created flowers, which will bring so much joy. Once you get your seeds, it is a good idea to plant your perennials in late autumn. So the soil is still warm, but there's quite a bit of rain, so it gives that perfect condition for establishing on wildflowers. Annuals, however, could be planted in spring. And that's absolutely fine, and it gives you the opportunity to sort of get your first flowers in. Although annual seeds, and it is quite a strange thing, but well, hold on a second, why do I need to plant them every year? Surely they produce seeds, so if I leave them there and the seeds drop, they will flower. That's true, and some of them would, but it's hit and miss really, and you really don't want to be disappointed. So it's always a good idea just to top up with the seeds, buy some seeds, perhaps experiment with different colours, different shades, and you will find which is the best one for your garden. And I do hope that you will all find a tiny bit of your garden, or gosh, a really big piece of your garden, which will turn into a wildflower meadow for enjoyment. So have bees, bumblebees, butterflies, all sorts of insects under the sun. So the third part of this talk, I would like to talk a little bit about a wildflower roof. And it's a very interesting subject, and I have a good experience and a bad experience. So of course, I started off with a bad experience. So I've gone to all of the effort of putting the right soil, putting a grit into it, make sure I have the right drainage, and I've done my planting. Oh, and I thought, hey, here we go. I'm going to end up with a beautiful wildflower roof. And to my disappointment, everything died. So that was the point where I have done this massive amount of research of how to establish a wildflower roof and I only have a 4 inches, 10 centimetres of soil to play with. Anyhow, I have, after a lot of time behind a screen and lots of experiment, established a most amazing wildflower roof, which we, and not just us, but wildlife enjoyed. Actually, what was quite interesting, I've noticed that from my floral gardens, which you can see behind me, the bees and bumblebees, I did have some, but at a period of time, they were not as busy in my floral garden as I was expecting. And so I went up on the roof, and that's where I realised, oh, I think they found a new spot. So they were sort of going between my floral garden and my wildflower roof. And also I've introduced wildflower borders throughout my on my lawn, which I enjoy. I think it's a lovely addition to the garden. So if any of you planning an extension or have a garden room or anything like that, think about it. Perhaps before you build, think whether could it take a wildflower roof? Could I design it so I can actually take a wildflower roof? So the spot which I'm using to build, which I am taking away from the nature, I'm taking away from the habitat, can I reintroduce the habitat back on the roof and give that back? So I would like to say, anybody, if you have the intention of add value to the wildlife, please do think carefully about the plants you're going to plant in your garden. Try to see whether you can put and find a piece of a garden for your wildflower meadow. So if you're considering turning your garden into a wildlife haven, then or introducing a wildflower meadow, or indeed considering a wildflower roof, We'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch, whether you want an advice or you want a little help, or you want us to take the whole project on board. We are only based here in Compton, so very close to anybody in the West Berkshire, and we'd love to be a part of creating your garden into a wildlife-friendly, pollinated floral garden. Please do get in touch. Thank you. Have a lovely day.